Title: Billionaire hires a nurse for his sick son, installs cameras and discovers something heartbreaking. Part 1. The First Glimpse. William Cole had never believed in ghosts. As a seasoned investigative journalist, he had exposed frauds, uncovered corporate scandals, and even walked through so-called haunted houses with nothing but a flashlight and a smirk. But when he inherited the lighthouse at Bracken Hill, a weather-beaten tower standing alone against the grey waves of the Atlantic, he didn't expect to feel anything other than annoyance. The structure was a relic, gifted to him in the will of an uncle he barely remembered. Still, something about it called to him. Not sentiment, not nostalgia. Something else. Curiosity, maybe. Or a chill in his bones he couldn't explain. The lighthouse was old, crumbling in places, its white paint peeling from salt and time. The spiral staircase creaked under his feet as he made his way to the top, each step echoing like a whisper. It wasn't just the wind that howled around him, it was the silence that followed. In the keeper's quarters, the furniture was sparse. A rusted bed frame, a wooden desk, and shelves lined with dust-covered books. But it was the desk that caught his attention. The drawers were mostly empty, except one. It groaned as he opened it, revealing a leather-bound diary. The pages were brittle, the ink faded. But the handwriting was meticulous. March 4th, 1987. The fog returned last night. Thick as wool. Heard the bell again. But there's no bell tower. Not anymore. Maya said she saw a man standing at the cliff's edge. I saw nothing. She doesn't speak of it now. William blinked. Maya! He flipped through more entries. March 11th, 1987. Maya woke screaming again. Said the same name. Edward. She never knew him. I never spoke of him. How can she dream of someone who drowned 20 years before she was born? The name chilled him. Edward. A man long dead? A name that didn't belong? William sat back. The diary was written by the former lighthouse keeper, his uncle, Arthur. And Maya was Arthur's daughter. Or was she? He searched through boxes in the adjacent room and found photos, black and white, yellowing at the edges. One showed a girl, maybe 16 or 17, standing barefoot at the lighthouse's balcony, her hair wild in the sea breeze. On the back, Maya, summer of 86. There was something unsettling in her eyes. Not fear. Not sadness. Something distant. He closed the box. Outside, the wind picked up. The waves slammed against the rocks with thunderous applause. William leaned on the windowsill, watching the fog roll in with unnatural speed. It swallowed the coastline, the trees, and the road he came from. Then, he heard it. A bell. Low, heavy, distant, but there was no bell on the lighthouse. He knew that. The last bell was dismantled in the 70s after rust had eaten through its support. He turned slowly, half expecting someone behind him. Nothing. The diary called to him again. March 23rd, 1987. Maya hasn't spoken for 3 days. She stays at the mirror. I tried covering it, removing it. She finds another. Said she sees someone in them. A boy in fire. But the lighthouse never burned. William's breath caught. A boy in fire? He walked to the mirror above the sink, now covered in grime. He wiped it with his sleeve. His own reflection stared back, tired, confused. Then, behind him, movement. He spun. Nothing. But the hairs on his arms rose. He wasn't alone. And he knew, with the kind of certainty that can't be explained, that the diary wasn't fiction. It was a warning. Part 2. Echoes in the fog. William barely slept that night. The old bed in the keeper's quarters creaked with every shift of his weight, and the wind rattling the window panes made it feel like the lighthouse itself was groaning with age, or warning. The diary lay open on the desk, as if Arthur's words were waiting for him to return. The bell, the boy in fire. Maya! He couldn't stop thinking about her. Arthur's entries were fragmented, disturbed, a man descending into something beyond understanding. But William knew the rhythm of genuine fear, and Arthur's writings had that rhythm. They weren't fictions. They were desperate truths. Just before dawn, William grabbed a flashlight and headed down to the cellar. Something had gnawed at him. The way Arthur mentioned mirrors. Dozens of entries, each one gradually more frantic. What was Maya seeing? And why did Arthur try to get rid of every reflection? The cellar was damp and smelled of salt and mildew. Dust clung to cobwebs like old snow. A row of rusted lockers lined one wall, and beside them, covered in a moldy top, was a full-length mirror. The glass was cracked at the corner. He approached it slowly. His own face flickered in the dim beam of his flashlight, unshaven, drawn. He reached out and brushed his fingers along the glass. A pulse. Not physical. Not visible. But something inside him jolted. He stepped back. He wasn't alone in that reflection. Behind him, just for a second, he saw a girl. Long black hair. Barefoot. Pale. Gone. He turned, wildly sweeping the beam of light. Empty. The cellar was still. Heart pounding, he climbed back up to the keeper's quarters. He slammed the door behind him, like that would help. It didn't. The diary was open again. But he was certain, absolutely certain, he had closed it. April 2nd, 1987. Maya stood by the cellar again. Her eyes were black. No whites. I tried to speak to her. She whispered, his coming through the glass. I asked who. She only said, the boy. William swallowed. The entries were getting darker. He needed answers. And he knew where to look. The local archives. Bracken Hills Historical Society was a narrow building squeezed between a hardware store and a bait shop. Inside, the scent of aged paper and lemon oil filled the air. The woman at the front desk barely looked up when he walked in. I'm looking for anything on the Bracken Hill Lighthouse. Especially around the 1980s, William said. The woman's eyes finally met his. You're not the first. He blinked. Excuse me. She stood, motioning him to follow. Your uncle came here often. Arthur. He used to dig through the archives every week. Said he was looking for a boy who never existed. William's skin prickled. What do you mean? She led him to a back room filled with filing cabinets and rolled maps. Arthur believed the lighthouse was cursed, she said, pulling out a thick folder. Said it began with a boy in the fire. She handed William a newspaper clipping. The headline was faded, but the words were legible. Local boy dies in lighthouse fire, 1962. He scanned it. Edward Chambers, age 10, perished in a mysterious fire at the Bracken Hill Lighthouse. Firefighters reported no structural damage to the lighthouse, and no evidence of a blaze could be found after the smoke cleared. Cause of death listed as extreme internal burns without external fire source. What? Another clipping followed. Maya Cole missing, 1987. His breath hitched. Maya Cole, age 17, daughter of lighthouse keeper Arthur Cole, was reported missing on March 29, 1987. Last seen near the cliffs at Bracken Hill Lighthouse. No body was recovered. Authorities ruled it an accidental fall, though no evidence of impact was found below. So it was her. Maya had vanished. Just like Edward. His head spun. Why would Arthur leave all of this behind? Why now? He turned to the woman. Did Arthur ever talk about what he saw? She nodded slowly. Once. He said the mirrors in the lighthouse showed more than reflection. He said they showed memories. And sometimes, those memories refused to stay memories. Back at the lighthouse, William returned to the cellar. The mirror waited. He didn't want to look, but he had to. This time, when he stared into the glass, he saw her again. Maya! Closer! Her eyes weren't black, not yet. But they were pleading. Reaching. Maya! He whispered. Her mouth moved. No sound. Then a single word. Again and again. Edward. Behind her, smoke. Flames. Then a hand, charred, inhuman, grabbed her shoulder and pulled her back into the darkness. The mirror shattered. William stumbled backward as shards rained across the floor. But something had changed. He wasn't afraid. He was angry. Something had taken Maya. And Edward. And maybe others. He couldn't explain how or why, but the evidence was stacking up. And the diary, that cursed, rambling diary, might be his only map forward. He turned the page, glass crunching underfoot. April 9th, 1987. I saw Edward again. Only this time, it wasn't in the mirror. He stood in Maya's room. He said, You brought her here. You opened the way. I locked the room. But the door keeps opening. I hear them at night, whispering through the walls. William stepped out into the night. Fog wrapped the world in grey silence. But now, he could feel it. The lighthouse was alive. And something inside was watching. Part 3. The door that won't stay closed. The days following his discovery felt surreal. William couldn't shake the feeling that the lighthouse was no longer just a place of history or solitude. It was a trap, a prison of memories and shadows. Every night, after the sun dipped below the cliffs, William heard the whispers. At first, faint and indecipherable, but they grew louder, almost like a chant carried by the salty wind. He kept thinking of Arthur's words. I hear them at night, whispering through the walls. One evening, as the fog curled thick around the lighthouse, William decided to explore Maya's old room. The door was rusted shut, the lock old and corroded. But the door had a stubbornness, a strange resistance, that no amount of force could overcome. He sat on the floor, pressing his ear to the wood. Whispers. Soft, distant. Calling. William. The voice was unmistakable. Maya's voice. He jerked back, heart pounding. But something stronger than fear pushed him forward. The door creaked. It cracked open. A slit of darkness yawned before him. Inside, the room looked frozen in time. A small bed, a desk littered with papers, a cracked mirror leaned against the far wall. One that Arthur must have covered. William's flashlight beam trembled as it landed on the mirror. He stepped closer. This time, the reflection wasn't his own. Instead, it showed Maya standing behind him, her eyes wide, searching, as if trapped. "Maya," he whispered. "I'm here." She raised a hand, reaching through the glass as if begging for release. Then, suddenly, the room shifted. The air grew thick. The temperature dropped. The whispers turned into a steady chorus. William staggered back, slamming the door shut. The lock held, for now. Determined to understand, William started piecing together everything he could find about the fire and the disappearances. According to old reports, Edward Chambers was not just a random victim. He was a troubled boy with a mysterious connection to the lighthouse, a boy Arthur's diary called the key. William found a faded photo of Edward taped inside a yellowed folder at the archives. The boy's eyes were hauntingly familiar, deep pools of sorrow. The more he dug, the more the lines blurred between reality and nightmare. One afternoon, William sat down with the only living person who might hold answers, an old fisherman named Caleb, who claimed to have known Arthur. Caleb's face was weathered by decades of sea wind, but his eyes were sharp. "I knew Arthur," Caleb said, voice low. "Good man, but haunted. Said the lighthouse was cursed by something old, something tied to the sea and fire. Said it trapped souls, especially the young ones." "Why Maya? Why Edward?" William asked. Caleb sighed. Arthur tried to stop it. Tried to close the door between worlds. But it's stubborn. And dangerous. The mirror, it's not just glass. It's a barrier. Sometimes it cracks. Sometimes it breaks. That's when the others slip through. William swallowed the chill crawling down his spine. So Maya's trapped in between. More than trapped. She's caught in a loop of memory and fear. Like Edward. William nodded, the weight of the truth settling heavy. That night, William prepared for what he feared most. A confrontation with whatever haunted the lighthouse. He returned to Maya's room with a diary in one hand and an old iron key Caleb had given him in the other. The door unlocked easily this time. Inside, the mirror gleamed. William held the diary before the glass and read aloud the last entry he hadn't seen before. April 15th, 1987. The door between worlds is thinning. I can feel it. Edward is near. Maya is slipping further away. If I don't close this soon, there will be no coming back. As the words left his lips, the air around him rippled. Suddenly, the mirror surface shimmered. Maya appeared. Her form flickered like a candle's flame. Her eyes, no longer black but filled with sorrow and hope. "William," she said softly, "you must close the door." Behind her, Edward's face appeared, twisted with pain. William reached out instinctively, but his hand passed through her. A cold wind swirled, and the room darkened. The mirror cracked deeper. Whispers filled the air, louder now, pleading. "Help us." William understood. The door wouldn't stay closed until he found a way to break the curse. To free Maya, Edward, and all the others trapped in the mirror's cold prison. And the diary was his guide. William spent the next days deciphering Arthur's cryptic notes and maps. He learned that the fire was no accident but a ritual gone wrong, a desperate attempt to seal the gateway. The mirror was the key, but breaking the curse required a sacrifice, something precious, something connected to the lighthouse. William looked at the diary, then at the room where Maya had lived, the echoes of the past reverberating around him. He wasn't sure what the sacrifice meant, or if he was ready. But one thing was clear. The lighthouse's shadow was growing. And William had stepped into a story far darker than he had ever imagined. Part 4. Echoes of Fire and Blood. Word count, 2380. The lighthouse stood like a silent sentinel, its weather-beaten walls hiding secrets older than anyone alive. William had spent days poring over Arthur's diary, tracing the lines of a forgotten ritual, a desperate attempt to trap something ancient and malevolent behind the mirror. But the more he uncovered, the more the pieces of the puzzle terrified him. The fire wasn't just a tragic accident. It was a deliberate act to seal a rift between two worlds. The ritual required sacrifice, a soul bound to the lighthouse, willing or unwilling. William's mind kept drifting back to Maya and Edward, young lives caught in that loop of torment. One night, as a violent storm rattled the cliffs, William returned to the mirror room. The whispers had grown into pleading cries, echoes of the trapped souls. He had to act. There was no turning back. Standing before the mirror, he held the iron key Caleb had given him. The diary opened to a page marked with strange symbols. The air chilled, and the surface of the mirror rippled like water. Maya's flickering form appeared, her eyes filled with desperate hope. "William," she whispered. "The sacrifice must be made. The ritual must be completed." William swallowed the lump in his throat. "What sacrifice?" he asked. "Your own," she replied. His heart hammered in disbelief. He wasn't ready to die. Not like this. But as the mirror cracked further, revealing glimpses of a dark void beyond, he realized it was more than a threat. It was a promise. Suddenly, Edward appeared behind Maya, his face twisted in sorrow and rage. "The lighthouse demands blood," Edward said in a hollow voice. "Only then will the door close." William's hands trembled, but his resolve hardened. He would do whatever it took to free them, to end the nightmare. The storm raged outside as William prepared for the ritual. Using the diary's instructions, he arranged candles in a circle, placing the iron key at the center. He lit the candles, the flames flickering wildly as the wind howled through the cracks in the walls. The whispers swelled into a chorus of voices, filling the room with desperate cries. William began chanting the ancient words Arthur had written, his voice steady despite the fear clutching his chest. The mirror pulsed with energy, and the room seemed to bend and twist. Maya's form grew brighter, her eyes fixed on William with gratitude and sorrow. But just as the ritual reached its peak, the door slammed open. Caleb stood there, soaked from the storm, his face grave. "Stop!" he shouted. "You don't understand what you're doing." William hesitated. "What do you mean?" he asked. Caleb stepped inside, glancing at the candles and the mirror. "The sacrifice isn't what you think. It's not death that seals the door, it's memory." William frowned. "Memory?" "Yes," Caleb said. "The lighthouse feeds on the pain and fear of those trapped within. But it can be starved if the memories of the fire and those lost are remembered, truly remembered." William's mind reeled. "So, I don't have to die?" "No," Caleb said. "But you must carry their stories, their pain. You must live with it, and share it." The room grew quiet, the candles flickering softly. William looked at Maya's fading image. "Will this free you?" Caleb nodded. "But it will bind you to the lighthouse in a different way." In the days that followed, William began recording everything. The diary, the whispers, the faces behind the mirror. He wrote letters to the families of those lost, sharing the truth about the fire and the lighthouse's curse. Word spread slowly, but the town began to remember. Memorials were held. Names were spoken aloud. The whispers faded. One evening, William returned to the lighthouse. The mirror was clear, reflecting only his own weary face. Maya's voice was gone. Edward's shadow vanished. The curse was broken, not by sacrifice of blood, but by sacrifice of memory and truth. William felt a deep ache, a reminder of the lives intertwined with his own now. The lighthouse stood quiet, its shadow lifting. But William knew the cost. He was the keeper of their stories, a living link between worlds. And as the sun set over the cliffs, he realized some doors, once opened, never truly close. Part 5, The Keeper of Shadows. The days grew longer, but the weight on William's shoulders never lightened. He had become more than a man. He was now the guardian of memories too painful for most to face. Each name he spoke aloud, each story he told, chipped away at the darkness that had gripped the lighthouse and the town for decades. Yet, deep inside, a gnawing emptiness remained. One chilly autumn evening, William stood at the cliff's edge, gazing at the sea's restless waves. The wind carried a faint whisper, almost like a breath from the past. "Maya," he whispered, his voice trembling. Behind him, the lighthouse loomed, silent and watchful. His phone buzzed, a message from Caleb. "Meet me at the old pier. We need to talk." Curious and cautious, William made his way through the foggy streets to the pier. Caleb was waiting, a somber expression etched on his face. "There's more," Caleb began. "Something Arthur didn't write, or perhaps something he feared." William's heart quickened. Caleb continued. "The mirror wasn't just a gateway. It was a prison, yes, but also a beacon. Something beyond that darkness noticed the ritual, the stories, the memories you carried." "What do you mean?" William asked. "That you drew attention," Caleb said grimly. "Not all spirits want to be freed." Before William could respond, a cold wind swept past them, carrying an unnatural chill. Suddenly, the water before them shimmered, and from its depths emerged a figure cloaked in shadow, neither fully human nor entirely spirit. Its eyes glowed with ancient knowledge and malevolence. "You have broken the seal," the figure's voice echoed like thunder, "and now, the price must be paid." William and Caleb stood frozen, the weight of what they faced crashing down like the waves below. The shadow reached out, tendrils of darkness curling around the pier's posts. But William, remembering the strength found in truth and memory, stepped forward. I carry their stories, their pain. I will not let darkness consume them again. The figure recoiled, hissing like a wounded beast. A sudden light erupted from William's chest, the light of remembrance, of voices united in truth. The shadow shrieked, then dissipated into 1,000 sparkling fragments that faded with the rising sun. Breathing heavily, William looked at Caleb. This isn't over, Caleb said quietly. But the lighthouse is safe for now. William nodded, feeling the dawn of something new. He wasn't just a keeper of shadows, he was a beacon of hope. Weeks later, the town held a memorial at the lighthouse. Faces once haunted by silence now found peace in remembrance. William stood among them, Maya's memory a gentle presence in his heart. The fire had burned, but from its ashes rose a story, one of courage, sacrifice, and the unbreakable bonds between the living and the lost. And as the lighthouse beams cut through the night sky, William knew his journey was only beginning. For some doors, though closed, always beckon the brave to look beyond the shadows.